Allow me to introduce myself.
I am the last sane sports fan.
I am a genius by trade.
I just knew too much. Does that make me crazy? Does that make me crazy? Does that make me crazy? Possibly.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of The View from the Midwest. Today we're going to be talking about sports officiating, and it's been a very frustrating time for fans of sports if you have really viewed the officiating. Even as an objective person, it's gotten to the point where officiating has just reached a level where it just seems like they're completely incompetent. And I'm not one of those people that sits there and just bashes referees left and right. I mean, when you're at a game and you're into things and you're supporting a certain side, a certain team, then you're obviously going to see things a certain way. Because I've always marveled at the fact that if you were watching a game as a neutral and you see somebody complaining about the officials and you really don't care about the outcome, a lot of times you do end up siding with the officials because you end up seeing things in a different light. You end up seeing things in a way that makes you say, well, no, I can actually see what the official was saying there. But on the flip side, there have been instances, plenty of them, in fact, recently, where you could say as a neutral, the officials have just been terrible. In the national championship game for college basketball, there were a lot of fouls called that kind of left your head scratching. And then there were some that weren't called that you're like, well, you just called that down there, but you're not going to call this over here. And one of the big reasons we're discussing this topic today, is yesterday in an NHL game, which shall remain nameless, there were several instances of the officials making guess calls. And I think that's one of the big things that's most frustrating. Regardless of whether it's hockey, football, basketball, whatever, it's become an epidemic. Officials are making a lot of guess calls. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they are so worried about the replays that they think, well, we have to try to get it right beforehand. We need to not let anybody else see the call. It's like we need to just say, oh, that's it. That's the call. That had to have been what it was. And then, in retrospect, they end up making themselves look foolish because when you do see the replay, people are scratching their heads again. There was a perfect example in a hockey game yesterday. Situation in front of the goal. One of the players, the offensive player, sat there, reverse checked, threw a shoulder into the guy, did connect with his face. There was a penalty to be called perhaps. But the official guessed that the stick came up because the guy ended up bleeding, and he ends up sitting for 4 minutes due to a double minor instead of what could have easily been just a 2-minute interference call. Now, no goals were scored on that play, so you can sit there and say, well, it didn't end up affecting the game. But that's 4 minutes that the other team doesn't have one of the most important offensive pieces. They called that high sticking. That was the other joke about it. They called that high sticking, double minor high sticking. And then the offending team on that play, the next period, actually takes a stick to the mouth, is bleeding, shows the official, and they don't care. There was no call to be made right there now. And another thing that I understand where hockey's trying to go. You want to try to eliminate all the stick work and everything. But a goal was taken away yesterday in that same game in a situation where by the letter of the law, I mean, if you watch it slow-mo replay, by the letter of the law, it was a penalty because the offending person took their stick and kind of reached around, tapped the other guy's stick, and he lost the stick. But I mean, we're talking about a situation where a drop of rain could have touched that other person's stick and he would have dropped it. He was holding it so loosely. By the letter of the law, it was a penalty, but there's got to be some sort of happy medium ground to where you can find a situation to where you're not having people just ram their stick into somebody and get away with it like they did back in the 80s and 90s, or versus a situation where you barely even tap somebody. Oh, all of a sudden you need to spend 2 minutes in the box. And this isn't just a hockey epidemic. It's creeping into basketball. It's been in football for quite some time. Football is a situation where a lot of times with the replay, they can get calls right in the end. Baseball's another situation. Listen, I've been an official. I've been an umpire. I've been a soccer referee. I've watched enough sports as a neutral in other sports to understand how difficult officiating is. And a lot of times, especially as a soccer referee, our mindset was if you have both sides complaining that you need to call it both ways, then basically you are calling it both ways. And they just don't happen to like that particular offense that went against them. And that's perfectly fine. There's never going to be an official, because we're human, there's never going to be an official that calls everything 100% correct in anybody's view. They can get their call right every single time. But in a fan's mind, they will never always have it right. That's not even the point here. Something needs to be done about officiating in the professional ranks right now, because they're just getting too many calls wrong that are honestly affecting games. People can sit there and say, and in some instances there are truth to this, but people can sit there and say, oh, well, yes, that call did affect the game a little bit, but they had their opportunities in other spots to where they could have taken advantage and still come out victorious. I'm tired of that excuse. The officials are affecting games, left, right, and center. You cannot interject yourself. You're supposed to be sitting there calling things by the rule book. You cannot sit there and affect the outcome of a game. Sports has gotten to a point now where every win is precious. Every point is hard gained. They need to find a way to get things right. Don't end up costing teams points, wins, what have you, down the road because they got a call wrong. That's the view from the Midwest. Comment, rate, and subscribe, and I will see you next time.